chest of gold across the seven seas. I'm traveling on far and wide, but now it seems I'm just a stranger to myself.
So this site is historically important because Henry Thoreau lived here. He was a philosopher and poet. He wrote poetry, and he was kind of trying to figure out what his purpose was in the world back in the 19th century. And he left his main world society and figured out who he was, and lived in this small house right here. And he became a minimalist, really. And that house is pretty small, I'd say. Maybe it's about 10 by 12, would you say? It's a very small house, and he really started living off the land. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Thoreau's house. It's pretty small, and he lived there from July 4th, 1845 to September 6th, 1847. It was stood on a slope overlooking Walden Pond, about half a mile away from there. Thoreau built the house with his own hands, actually, so he really did a lot of that work. The whole house cost him $28.12.5 to build. He spent $8.03.5 on boards, $4 on roofs and shingles, $1.25 on laths, and $2.43 on 2 secondhand windows and glass. So he bought the glass secondhand, which was cool. He bought brick. He brought a 1,000-year-old brick for $4. He got 2 casks of lime for $2.40. Hair for 31 cents. Iron for 15 cents. Nails for roughly $4, $3.90. Hinges and screws for 14 cents. One latch for 10 cents. Chalk for 1 cent, and transportation for all that for $1.40. So let's go check out Henry's house. Let's go. So this is obviously a recreation of his house. It's not the original. This is the shingle from the outside. Rock stepping stone. Alright, so over here on the left is a small table and a chair. That seemed kind of luxurious. I'm not sure if we really needed that. Over here is a desk where I guess he did some of his work and philosophy. And there's another chair. Over here is a rocking chair in this corner. And over here is a metal plate on the ground to hold his furnace, which is a wood-burning furnace. And not only did this heat his house, this also cooked his food on here. And that went up the chimney, all the exhaust. And here's where he kept his firewood. And over here is where he slept. So it's all pretty small. It's probably around 13 feet long, maybe not even, maybe 14 feet, and maybe around 9 feet wide, 10 feet wide. So that's this little house. This is the door. So even though this is a historical site from the 1800s, it can still be enjoyed today by people of all ages, whether it's friends or family, or even people you don't know. There are tons of interesting experiences waiting to be happened here. So some of the key attractions of the park are Walden Pond, this pond right here, and another key attraction of the park is Henry Thoreau's house, which we looked at earlier. And that's one of the main attractions of the park. So Henry Thoreau lived in his house from 1845 to 1847, and while he was there, he
wrote his book Walden, which was him observing the natural environment and helped people connect to, as I said, the natural environment. The park has 335 acres of open space where visitors can take pictures or swim or do whatever I talked about before. And that's that. In the 1800s, there's not a whole lot of information because Henry really was busy. When I say busy, he was living by himself alone, but he was very busy finding out questions, trying to answer questions, and doing his philosophy. And most of that just consisted of him exploring the natural environment. And I think this is pretty interesting because not a lot of people do this nowadays. And if more people knew how important the natural environment was, then we'd have a better world. Because especially these days, our environment is just it's so unhealthy. It's being polluted constantly. The Amazon rainforest, for example, is being cut down illegally and legally, and it's 30% of the world's oxygen comes from Amazon rainforest, so that's important. Um, as well as tons of animals are dying and all that. And it's also just it's healthy to learn about and be outside and learn about natural resources. You don't really need everything from factories, and Henry is living proof of that. He made his house, he made his clothes, he made his tools. He lived off of the land, and not many people do that nowadays.